First up, the narrative. And no, I'm not going to spoil any major story stuff here, so yeah. But the setup here is actually pretty cool. You play as this guy named Talion. He's a ranger of Gondor, and his job is basically to stand guard at the Black Gate of Mordor. Which sounds like the worst job in the entire world, right? So one rainy night, things go completely wrong, like very, very wrong. Sauron's forces attack the gate, and these super evil guys called the Black Captains show up. They capture Talion, his wife, and his son. And in this really dark, brutal ritual, they sacrifice his family right in front of him, and then they kill him too. Yep, it's a super dark way to start a video game. But here's the catch. Talion doesn't die. Or rather, he dies, but like he's banished from death or something. Anyways, he wakes up bound to this mysterious blue wraith spirit. At first you got no idea who this dude is, but you eventually find out it's Celebrimbor. And if you're a Lord of the Rings nerd, you probably already know that he's the legendary elven smith who was tricked by Sauron into forging the Rings of Power. So now, you have this incredibly angry human ranger and this incredibly angry ancient elf spirit sharing one body. They're both stuck in Mordor, and they both want revenge against Sauron and his captains. It's a classic revenge plot. Like, it's pretty straightforward, you know? You basically run around Mordor tracking down people who ruined your lives.
What do you know of the Black Hand of Sauron?
He is a fiend, made of thin air.
What more?
Not gonna lie, the story's kinda secondary in these games. The plot is decent, but it's definitely not the main reason you play this game. Yes, the opening hours have a lot of emotional tension, but after a while, the plot starts to lose its momentum. You end up doing a bunch of weird escort missions and target eliminations that feel a bit disconnected from the whole revenge thing. You also run into some familiar faces, like Gollum, which is cool, but it feels a little bit like fan service. And to be honest, the ending of the game is pretty disappointing. When you finally reach the ultimate bad guy, the game doesn't give you an epic boss fight where you use all the cool skills you learned. Instead, you're presented with a lame-ass QuickTime event. But you know what? The real story here isn't the one written by the devs. I feel like the real story is the one you create yourself in the open world. The interactions you have with the random orcs are way more interesting than anything happening in the main cutscenes. I actually spent most of my time just ignoring the main quests because I was having way too much fun hunting down orc captains who had insulted me. Yes, I have a small ego. Anyways, if you're coming into this game in 2026 expecting some cinematic masterpiece, you might be a bit let down. But if you want a sandbox where you can create your own story with actual gameplay, this game delivers just perfectly.
You won't catch me with simple tricks.
Okay, moving on to visuals and art style. And looking at this game today is really interesting. Because back in 2014, it was a huge deal graphically. It was built on their new LithTech engine, and Monolith really pushed the hardware to its limits. I remember when the PC requirements dropped, everyone was like, what the hell, because it needed 6 GB of VRAM for the Ultra texture pack. Back then, that was an absolutely insane number, and on consoles it was a bit of a mixed bag. On PS4 you could actually play it in native 1080, which looked pretty good. But if you were playing on the Xbox One, it was dropped down to an upscaled 900p, which made everything look a bit softer and blurrier. So how does it look today? Well, it holds up surprisingly well, mostly because the art direction is pretty strong. It tries to capture that dark, muddy, depressing feeling of Mordor really well. You start off in this area called Udun, which is just ash, rocks and mud. It's super gloomy. But the rain effects are really nice, and I love rain in games except whatever the hell this was in the definitive edition of GTA. Anyways, later in the game, you unlock the other area which is actually green and lush. The soundtrack is also well produced and really brings that epic Middle-earth feel to the whole experience. But to be honest, you can definitely tell it's an older title when you look at the character models, especially the humans. Compared to its sequel, Shadow of War, some of the human characters in this game look like they're made out of shiny clay. The faces are a bit stiff, and the animations in cutscenes can be a little robotic. But the orcs? Oh man, the orcs look incredible. It's like the devs spent 90% of their budget just making the ugliest, most detailed orcs possible. Every single orc captain looks unique. Some are missing eyes, some have metal plates bolted to their heads, and some are covered in tribal paint or horrible scars. The amount of detail on the enemies is what makes the game still look pretty today. So the overall visual package is totally fine for 2026. It's not gonna blow your mind or anything, but it gets the job done. Right, so let's get into the actual gameplay mechanics because this is where I believe the game shines the most. When you're running around the open world, the traversal feels very much like Assassin's Creed. You can climb up almost any wall and scale huge ruined towers, but because you have this elven dude inside you, everything is super fast. Okay, that was a very weird sentence to say. What I meant was that parkour and the whole traversal is actually fast. You also have this Wraith Vision, which is basically detective mode from the Arkham games. I'm actually not a big fan of this feature in any game, to be honest. But let's talk about the stealth. Not gonna lie, the stealth in this game is completely broken and I kinda love it. It's overwhelmingly powerful. The orcs in Mordor apparently have the worst eyesight in the history of video games. You can literally just hold down the stealth button, run directly into an orc's face, and as long as you hit the attack button before they finish their little surprise animation, you will just instantly execute them. You don't really need to be a tactical genius hiding in bushes. You can just sprint around stabbing everyone in the neck and nobody seems to notice. It's actually pretty fun. And when you do get caught, the combat opens up and it's so good. It's a rhythm-based free-flow combat system. Like you can attack, stun, and counter. You basically jump into a group of 20 orcs and just start swinging. When an orc is about to hit you, an icon flashes over their head letting you know you can counter, so you block or counter it and keep fighting. And as you land hits without taking damage, your combo meter goes up. Once it hits a certain number, your sword starts glowing blue and you can pull off an execution. The camera zooms in and you just brutally chop an orc's head off in slow-mo. It's so incredibly satisfying and never ever gets old. You also have a bow, and when you pull it out, time slows down, letting you line up perfect headshots. You have a limited number of these shots though, but you can get more by grabbing an orc and draining their mind. It creates this really awesome combat loop. You shoot a few guys with arrows, jump into the crowd with your sword, build up a combo, execute a big guy, then grab a small guy to drain his mind and get your arrows back. You can also pick up runes that drop when you kill captains, and these give your weapons stat boosts, like gaining health when you get a stealth kill, or making your bow do more damage. The combat is simple, yes, but it's the kind of simple that just feels incredibly good.
Is this your best, Grave Walker?
And this brings us to the Nemesis system. This is the entire reason the game is a masterpiece, for me at least. Basically, this Nemesis system takes these random enemies you fight and turns them into actual characters with their own stories. Like in most other games, if you fight a generic bad guy, you kill him, he dies, and you move on. But here, the orc army is a living, breathing hierarchy. If you open up the menu, you see this massive grid of orc captains and war chiefs. All of them are procedurally generated. They have unique names, unique armor, unique voices, and most importantly, unique strengths and weaknesses. Like you might run into an orc who's immune to stealth and ranged attacks, meaning you gotta fight up close. But wait, it gets crazier. If an orc actually manages to kill you, the game doesn't just reload your last save. Time actually moves forward, and the orc who killed you gets promoted. His power level goes up, he gets better armor, and he remembers you. The next time you see him, he will literally point at you and say something like, "I already killed you once, human, let's do it again." It creates these amazing organic rivalries. And if you fight an orc and leave him for dead, he might actually survive. And he might come back hours later and ambush you in the middle of a completely different mission. The system just constantly generates these insane scenarios. But here's the absolute worst part about this. Warner Brothers actually patented the Nemesis system, which makes this game a masterpiece, yes, but it also makes it a graveyard of lost potential for the rest of the industry.
weak as a babe. Did you forget that doesn't work? Ready for pain?
Anyways, let's talk about how long this game actually is and how the difficulty works. If you're the kind of player who just wants to get through the main story and ignore everything else, you can probably roll the credits in about 15 hours. It's honestly not a massive game. If you take your time, do a bunch of side quests, hunt some war chiefs, and gather some collectibles, you're looking at around 25 hours. And if you want to be a completionist and hit that sweet 100% mark, it will take you like 40 hours at max. It respects your time. You don't have to clear a million map markers like in most Ubisoft games. But the weirdest thing about the game is its difficulty. Usually games start easy and get harder as you go. But Shadow of Mordor does the exact opposite. When you start the game, you're basically a peasant with a sword. You have no health, you don't have your cool combo moves, and you're super vulnerable. If you run into a camp of 5 orcs, they will absolutely destroy you. And don't even get me started on the wildlife. But then, you start leveling up. You get upgrades, you unlock abilities, and halfway through the game the difficulty just completely falls off a cliff. You become literally unkillable. The game never introduces harder enemies to match your new powers. So you spend the last few hours of the game running around like an absolute unit, which is cool, but kinda boring at times.
I recognize that move.
Next up, replayability, because this is another area where the game shows its age. In almost every modern game, when you beat the story, you unlock a new game plus, right? You replay the story on a harder difficulty with all your cool late game powers and skills. It's the best way to replay a game. Well, Shadow of Mordor doesn't have any of that. Once you finish the game and want to play the story from the beginning, you literally have to delete your save file and restart from scratch. That means you lose all your upgrades. You lose all your runes. And the most heartbreaking part? You lose all your favorite orcs. If you spent 20 hours grooming a specific orc to become your ultimate bodyguard, he's gone forever. You can't keep your orcs and send them to a garrison like you can in the sequel Shadow of War. On PC, you can kinda cheat by making a backup of your save file in some other folder, but if you're on a console, you only get one save slot. If you start a new game, your old world is dead. Now, the game does let you replay some of the old story missions from a pause menu, but it's super clunky. The quests don't even show up in chronological order in the menu. And there are also the DLCs which add a little bit of replay value, but it's a mixed bag. First you have the Lord of the Hunt DLC, which is okay at best. You just run around fighting new Beastmaster war chiefs. It takes about 3 hours and it's decent, nothing special here. And then there's the Bright Lord DLC. This one sounds amazing on paper because you actually get to play as Celebrimbor in the past, and you get to fight Sauron. But playing it is actually kinda awful. It's a cool concept, but it's definitely not worth the headache unless you're a huge lore nerd who just really wants to see Sauron. Right, so we have looked at the story, the muddy visuals, the awesome combat, the legendary nemesis system, and the weird missing features like New Game Plus. So the ultimate question, how does it hold up in 2026? We live in an era where open world games have become completely bloated. They're filled with endless checklists, boring fetch quests, and maps that are way too big for their own good. Shadow of Mordor is the exact opposite of that. It's a tightly designed action game that gives you a playground and tells you to have fun. The combat, even with the weird difficulty curve, is incredibly satisfying. Chopping off orc heads never really gets old. Anyways, that's all I have for you guys today. Let me know in the comments what your favorite orc encounter was, and I'll catch you in the next one.